Welcome to another episode of Civic Cipher. I'm your host, Ramses Ja.
They call me Q Ward, and that just so happens to be my name.
Ain't that the truth? And today we have a lot to talk about.
Seems to always be the case. In today's climate, life itself continues to give us very, very important things to talk about and to touch on.
Yeah, and of course today is no exception. We haven't been able to do it just yet, but first off, happy Halloween, everyone. I'm going to start off on a positive note here. Hope everyone is safe and has a good time out there. If you're going to do whatever you're going to do, stay safe. But for today's show, we need to discuss something that hadn't been able to touch on just yet. And I want to talk about Ice Cube and Ice Cube's working with the Trump administration and what that means. Another thing I want to touch on, of course, is Walter Wallace Jr. If you don't know, he is a young man who was killed by police a few days ago in Philadelphia. I want to say they shot him maybe 8 or 10 times, something like that. There's more to the story, of course, so stick around. We're definitely going to touch on that and a couple other things. But first order of business, this is a homegrown story that made national news, at least homegrown for Q and myself, being from Phoenix, or rather from Arizona. We're going to talk about a realtor in Scottsdale, a neighboring city here to Phoenix in Arizona. A realtor who declared himself to be openly racist. And I think that I think this story really illuminates how folks can carry some really strange sentiments, some really hateful and hurtful sentiments, and you not even know it.
And proudly.
Yeah, exactly. So before I get into telling the story, I want to tell you a little bit about the background of Arizona and the folks that live here. So Arizona is still very much the Wild West. Arizona is one of those places that you can walk around with a gun on your hip or wherever you want to carry it openly, where everyone can see it and be intimidated or afraid of it, and no one will do a thing. Now, there's lots of places that can do that. This is the United States. There is the Second Amendment, but Arizona is very much one of those places, and there's still this cowboy energy in the way in the way of like almost like cowboys versus Indians. These aren't the cowboys that are the heroes in everyone's mind. These are the cowboys that are the heroes in their own mind. Now, in Arizona, if you're not familiar, there's very much in certain parts of the state and the city in Phoenix where we live, and in Old Town, Scottsdale, very much a celebration of Native culture, Native history, just the lay of the land. You can't really get away from it. It's beautiful, and lots of folks really appreciate the aesthetic. But in terms of the architecture, in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the attitudes, it's very much a celebration of cowboys conquering the land, frontiersmen pioneering the West and taking over lands and staking their claim, etc. And I think that energy still persists to this day. And the reason I wanted to tell you that is so you understand the backdrop for the story of this racist realtor. Now, if you haven't seen the video, I implore you to watch it. You can check out civiccipher.com, or you can check out any of our social media at Civic Cipher. The video is still up, and you'll see an Asian man approaching a black man, and they have it out. But for those who haven't seen the video, I'll paint a picture for you. There's one black man who's being filmed by another black man. And
the young man is a social media influencer, if you will, or a big YouTuber.
Sure.
So he's just capturing some content for his channel, for his IG, for his social media.
Right. And this is important to the story. He just moved to Arizona. My understanding is he moved recently to Arizona, to Scottsdale from Michigan. That's important to the story. But I want to take a sidebar real quick. Lots of folks come here from Detroit, Michigan, or Michigan at large, the state. Q is one of those people.
Indeed.
And I know that when you come to Arizona from Michigan, it's a whole new world, like Aladdin and Princess Jasmine.
There's no better way to explain it than that. It's a whole new world, just like Aladdin and just like Princess Jasmine. Gentlemen.
So taking pictures should be normal for someone who comes from a place like that.
Reflexive.
To a place like this.
Exactly. Not even something that you have to think about. As soon as you, oh my goodness, what is?
Exactly. Grab a picture. So, and I want to further suggest to anybody, think in your own mind, if these two men were not black, if they were less melanated, they would be regarded as tourists taking photos, full stop. But because they're black, I think the ready assumption from the Asian man, that's not necessarily important to the story, but it helps to distinguish the two parties involved, regards them as criminal. I think largely because they're melanated, or only because they're melanated, as you'll find out as the story goes. So what happens is these guys are minding their business, taking their pictures or doing their videos or whatever, and they get approached by the older Asian man who walks up to them and asks them what they're doing. They respond, we're taking pictures, but why are you taking pictures of us? Leading us, the viewer, to believe that the Asian man had been taking pictures of them prior to his walking up to them. Afterwards, the Asian man suggests something like, well, we've had some trouble around here, something like that. And do you guys live out here? And the guys say, yeah, we live here. We live here, we're doing fine. And then says back to the Asian man, you're aware that, of all these stories happening with white folks harassing black folks for no reason. And he says all these racist white folks. He says something like that. And the Asian man says, well, I'm racist. Never heard anything like that before. He's just so calm about it. But yes, if you watch the video, he says it, sure enough.
Proclaimed it.
Yeah. And then afterwards declares Scottsdale to be either a N-word free zone or a no
N-word zone.
Yeah. And he didn't say N-word. He hit it with the hard R.
The hard ER.
ER. There you go. So when you see this video, if you're black, it hits how it hits. That video is not going to be the first time you hear that word in your life. If your parents did right by you to prepare you for it, so you have the mental fortitude to endure those sorts of situations. But if you're not a black person, hearing someone wield that word so freely, maybe you're used to it. Maybe it happens in your family, or maybe you're appalled and you didn't realize that someone would just walk up to a black person and just say that to them. But that's what happened. And the gentlemen that were getting the content for their channel, for the most part, kept their composure, didn't get physical or anything like that, but they obviously had to exchange some words. Told the old guy to walk away. And then they went and filmed the River Outpost store or something like that, and leading us to believe that guy worked at the River Outpost or River store, whatever. And
to be clear, he gave them the impression that that's
where he worked.
That was his place of business.
Sure. So I do want to say to everyone listening that if you watch the video, the River place is not where this guy works, but they do still need to really check their position on that Blue Shirts Matter flag they have hanging up in the window. But it turned out that he worked at Sotheby's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Worked. Past tense
worked. So before we get into that, I want to ask you, Q, when you first saw that, what went through your head?
Initial confusion. the perpetrator, the gentleman who's no longer employed, is an Asian man in America. And the measuring of plights, the comparison of wrongdoings is needless. But there are several groups of people historically that have been treated bad by this country. And for another minority to adopt that position is always confusing. I don't know if it comes from hate or misinformation or ignorance or a combination of the three. But it always catches me off guard. And I think that's what helped that young man not respond in a far worse way. Because you kind of have to laugh to yourself like, man, so another brainwashed one, huh? Right? Like, I understand the position of the oppressor. Like, they're the oppressor. They benefit largely from this. But from someone who's also been under the thumb to think this way, they got you. You brainwashed. It's cool. I forgive you. I should punch you in your face, but I forgive you.
Isn't that crazy that he didn't actually...
The fact that he didn't even really raise his voice, excuse me, in response impressed me.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that I could have maintained the calm in that way. And if I did, putting myself in that position, it would have to be from that, it's not your fault. You know, the forgive them for they know not what they do kind of thing. Like, oh, man, they got you too, huh? Poor guy. More feeling sorry for him than enraged by him.
So there's something that a lot of folks, thankfully, will never fully be able to appreciate, and that black folks have a special appreciation of. Appreciation is not the best word in this case, but we're going to roll with it. And that is the weight of the N-word. When it's on the lips of someone who is not black, and you are black, that is something that you can, there's almost like a tactile component there. You can feel that in a way that almost translates to like physical pain.
It's definitely weaponized.
Right.
Absolutely.
Now those things need to be in place because we'll say, for instance, if Q were to say something like that to me, and you understand, you know, that's between the two of us, given the right intonations and the right relationship, or, you know, a lot of times you don't even need a relationship. It just sounds familiar and familial, but, you know, change one little bit about it and it becomes, you know, something that, again, just kind of elicits a response that is very difficult to put into words. And I understand that a lot of folks who are not black have a difficult time understanding why a word could matter so much. And I want to take a moment to talk about that and to get your thoughts on it as well, Q. But for myself, what I want to say is, if I knew nothing else, and I was raised in an environment where that word didn't exist, and then all of a sudden I heard it, it wouldn't matter to me at all. The word itself does not have magic powers. It's not a call to black folks. You know, it doesn't cause melanin to, you know, respond at the frequent, you know, nothing like that. But I think that, at least for me, understanding that people, human beings who wore this beautiful color that God or the universe or whatever it is you choose to believe in chose to paint me, to know that that was the last word that many of them heard during their lifetime as they were ripped apart by horses, as they were set on fire. And on and on. I'm not going to get into that. It's heavy. But to know that I am the product, I'm the result of a proud group of people where that word was deliberately wielded over them to keep them oppressed, in a lot of ways, the people wielding that word really took it as truth, that these were in fact ignorant people. And I don't know if you're listening to my voice right now or not, but you can tell that I'm not an ignorant person. You might not be able to tell that I'm black as Vanta black, midnight, Ace of Spades black. You know, that's how we do over here. But I will say that it's very important to know that, at least for me, in my home, that is not a word that we use in jest or in a familiar capacity or not. That's not a word that my sons hear, because I don't see N-words when I look at my children. I see kings. But I also recognize that it's up to them and everyone who gets to wear this pretty color that God chose to paint me to decide how they want their story to be written and how they want that word to be chronicled in their lives. And so while I can't dedicate a whole show to just one word, I do want to take that moment to explain to folks who might not get the gravity of it, at least a little bit of that gravity in my life. What do you think?
I think there is too much nuance to it for us to cover it all.
Sure.
There are other examples of words that were meant to harm, meant to hurt, meant to insult, being co-opted by the person who was supposed to be insulted by it. Like the way that women use the B word.
Sure.
To and with each other as almost a term of endearment now.
Sure.
Whereas in once upon a time, you couldn't levy a heavier insult than that. Again, the way that it's said and who says it matters.
Absolutely.
So I won't take up too much of our time, because there is so much nuance. We would almost have to have an entire show about that, which I don't want to do. I don't know, man. My family is from the South. My mother's from Macon, Georgia, Bibb County, Georgia.
Talk to him.
The South.
Yeah, man.
And you and I, we did a show about our experiences in Mississippi. Imagine that tone, that accent, and that voice wielding that word towards us, and how much different it would feel than when a rapper says it in a song. A lot of people like to point to, well, why do they say it, and how come they say it, and they shouldn't say it. And those opinions vary, and everyone's allowed to have their opinion. Like I said, there's far too much nuance, and I don't have the time to really dig into it the way that I should. But the word has, in a familiar form, been co-opted by those who were supposed to be insulted by it, and flipped to a term of endearment in the way that, your favorite female rapper will call herself a bad B word as a big up or a compliment to herself, when the word was intended to be an insult. And how people feel when they hear it varies from person to person. So it's a conversation to be had, but
that's a big one.
There is a very, very tangible feeling to hearing that word used the way that man used it, even when he's not talking to you, because he is.
Yeah.
Because he is talking to you.
That's how you paint with broad strokes.
You know what I mean?
So, well, to continue with the story, we have a little bit of a community here in Phoenix, black folks and allies, as most cities do. And so we got to hold the video, and we got to share in that video. And then, some of the bigger platforms, Sean King, TMZ, on and on and on. Everyone started sharing that video. And personally, I happen to know some folks that work for the Arizona board of realtors or some important realtor association here in Arizona. But I have a friend that works very closely with him. And so I found out early on when the River Trading Post said that, he didn't work there, that he actually worked for Sotheby's, which is a luxury real estate agency.
If you've been to Arizona, Scottsdale, Phoenix, if you ride from Phoenix east on Camelback, almost every sign you see for every nice home that you see will be this particular company.
So they immediately denounced that behavior and put up a bunch of multicultural photos of their employees. And they fired him immediately, and then came back with the second post saying that they recommended that his real estate license be revoked. So I was not the only person looking to ensure that his license was revoked. I got back word a little early that it was revoked, and then I heard that he had been arrested for disorderly conduct. And so for those of us who believe that we are all brothers and sisters on this planet, in this country, in this city, or in your city, wherever you are listening to this, we'll call that a win. I do believe that there should be forgiveness built into every conversation. A lot of folks disagree with me there, but I think in this story, I'll call it a win because this man didn't lose his life and he got a chance to learn a lesson. And what's more important is that people who maybe feel the way that he feels understand now, perhaps a little further than they did in the past, that maybe there are some consequences if you get caught doing the wrong thing.
The very interesting thing that you unintentionally left out is that him approaching them on its face is not a crime. Him approaching them, him being a racist, him just approaching them because they're black, him expressing that he thinks there might be a problem, of course, because they're black. All of that's fine. It's the use of that word that made it criminal.
Yeah.
That's important to point out.
Yeah.
Especially because there are places
you can't do that,
where they're still trying to make hate crimes actual crimes.
It's not illegal to do a hate crime, or it's not classified as a hate crime.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, maybe the classification might need some specification, but the use of that word is what made his actions criminal, not just him being a jerk.
Indeed. So, again, happy ending there, and as happy an ending as you can expect given the circumstances. Everyone walked away, everything's good, lesson learned, hopefully by not just the man who lost his job, but by, again, folks who would observe that sort of thing. And like the other companies around there, they recognize, hey, you know what, these guys are better allies. These guys, meaning black folks and black allies, are better allies to us and our interest as a business than enemies, and maybe they might rethink their blue shirts matter stance and etc. But
we gotta have that conversation one day too.
Oh yeah, no, it'll come. We got an election coming up still, so we'll see where the chips lie.
I'm not looking forward to that. That's next week, by the way.
Yeah. But it's this coming week, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, yeah,
this coming week. So anyway, Ice Cube.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. If you are like me, you grew up listening to Ice Cube, and Ice Cube was the coolest, and he was Mr. F the Police. And
how about that?
Yeah,
from there to here.
Sure.
Wow.
And on and on. And then he made his family movies and so forth, and he pops up every so often, but he remember he did that. He had a time where he was like doing the Warped Tour, and he was like on stage with all the rock and roll guys, and he was trying to play in that field a little bit. But he's big enough, and he's from California, and I was born in California. I call myself from Phoenix, but I was born in California, and so he was always very much a hero in my book. Well, that very same Ice Cube put together some sort of resolution. Forgive me, I'm normally not this unprepared, but I forget the name of it.
Contract with Black America.
That's why I keep you around, because you know stuff. Anyway, so Ice Cube has this contract with Black America, and he's working with the Trump administration. And that's, on its face, sounds ridiculous, because Ice Cube is one of the heroes that would really speak. You know, Ice Cube is Muslim, you know, and Muslims are one of the first groups that Donald Trump insulted, you know. And Ice Cube is
one of the first groups he insulted as president. He started insulting black people.
In the 70s.
Long time ago.
I think he came out the wound, and that was probably
long time ago.
Right after he started crawling. Anyway, you know, so long story short, Ice Cube is the one person that you don't imagine would end up working with Donald Trump. Especially because he said it. Yes.
He self said it.
Now
that he would never.
Now, well, let me hear your thoughts on this first.
So here's problem
real
one.
Real quick. If you're just tuning in, this is Civic Cipher. I'm Ramses Ja.
My name is Quentin, but they call me Q Ward.
And right now we're going to talk about Ice Cube working with the Trump administration. Okay, your thoughts.
The idea that black people are a singular monolith community is on its face hilarious to me.
Sure.
We do not all think, feel, or act the same. So Ice Cube, without even having a meeting with those who would present themselves as more informed, the president of the NAACP, for instance, or someone, the former President Barack Obama, someone who at least by profession spends their time in this field working at least and in part for the black community, because as a singular, I just really think that's short-sighted. But if you're going to speak for all of us, how about you sit down with some of us first, right? And then if you're going to present these things as an exchange, we're going to sit at the negotiating table and I'm going to push forth these things that I want. Maybe make sure that the people that you're tearing down haven't already presented those same things, right? Because there's things in this contract with Black America that he's presenting to Donald Trump that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have already spoken to. So then you seem incredibly uninformed, incredibly unprepared to present yourself as the leader of said cause, when just simply clicking on Google a couple of times could have made you better prepared.
Sure.
So there's that first, right? If you're Ice Cube, if you're Ramses Ja, if you're Q Ward, if you're going to speak for all of us, first talk to some of us and then educate yourself so that the stance that you're taking isn't completely off base. Secondly, are we still trying to convince ourselves that this gentleman cares about anyone other than himself? And by this gentleman, I mean our president.
Yeah, my president.
Like, are we sincerely still trying to convince ourselves that there's a slither of decency and that we could actually sit and have a conversation with him that would yield some type of progressive outcome for anyone other than him and people that think like him and people that are very, very well off like him? Because I think once upon a time, people thought that, right? There were several black celebrities seen in his presence and people thought, well, maybe those people are just trying to get a seat at the table and trying to express themselves and something's going to come of it. We have yet to learn that for him, it's just a photo op. You just give him someone else to point to as an ally to say, hey, look how racist I'm not. Look at my black friend over here. What's your name, black friend? I can't.
My African American.
My African American.
That's what he refers to us as.
At some point, we have to I mean, we've been so conditioned to forgive and to turn the other cheek and to look and hope for the best outcomes. And in that way, I think we might be singular as a community, right? The fact that hundreds of years have passed and there's been no black uprising in the way that we just out here seeking revenge. Because even the Black Panther Party wasn't hitting the streets looking for revenge. We were just demanding equality. We were demanding your minimums. The things that you just automatically assume you're going to get, we have to arm ourselves and demand them. But that's it. Even when taking arms and organizing as a militant group, we still didn't hit the streets for payback. Even now, we don't spend a lot of time talking about reparations. Mostly because I think we just think it's impossible and it's never going to happen. But secondly, because we're not even trying to, we don't want you to pay us back. Just let us live. That's all. Black lives matter. That's it. You can stop there. There's a period after that. Not black lives are better. Not black lives are more important.
Certainly not blue shirts.
You know what I mean? We just want to matter. Sure. The fact that people even argue the merits of that as an organization or a statement. How on earth is that a controversial thing to say?
Crazy.
So we're not supposed to be hurt or feel betrayed when someone like Ice Cube, who we've revered and looked up to our whole lives, makes this kind of decision because he's just a celebrity. And why are we so invested in them? But let's be honest. We are so invested in them. Watching Ice Cube succeed and thrive is something that we all take personal. That's why we went to see Friday.
We wanted to see his baby in the NWA.
And that's why we went to see Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah, we're
and
proud.
Shouts to his son, man. He's brilliant. He's incredible. So yeah, I mean, all of these things hurt me. Ice Cube, 50 Cent, and other people that I know personally having a stance. So
Lil Pump. I said that to be
I just
funny.
almost unplugged my mic.
All right,
y'all.
so listen, I'm being funny. Well, in the case of 50 Cent and Lil Pump, what they said, while extremely nearsighted, short-sighted, selfish, hurtful, was based on the fact that they make so much more than $400,000 in a year that it was a fiscal position or posture on their part.
Yeah, a lot of people voted for this current guy for fiscal, financial reasons, right?
And my understanding is that his opposition, Joe Biden, will tax only the $400,000 in first dollar and above heavily. So if anybody makes less than that, or your first $400,000, that's kind of taxed at the normal rate or the standing rate. And I don't know anything about that stuff, but that explains 50 Cent, Lil Pump. I do want to talk about Ice Cube though. So I'm not playing devil's advocate here, but I do want to kind of paint a little bit of the other side of the picture because I saw him explain what he was trying to do. So Ice Cube said that his plan, what's the name of it again?
Contract with Black America.
Very good. Awesome. So the contract with Black America, I'm so glad you know so much more stuff than me.
Not true.
So Ice Cube's contract with Black America, he says, is something that he would have worked or discussed rather with the Biden campaign, as well as the Trump administration, as well as anyone willing to sit down and have that conversation with him. And he says that the Biden administration says, yes, we do want to have that conversation with you. We want to review it. We want to go over it, etc. But let's do it after the election. Whereas the Trump campaign had less in the way of a contract with Black America. And, it was convenient. This is me putting it together. He didn't say this. Let me finish. I'm putting it together. Donald Trump had to go to Georgia. And my understanding is Georgia sometimes could go this way, sometimes could go that way in terms of how they vote.
No, not really.
Not really. So it's always red.
Georgia and Florida, you don't typically have to wonder which way they're going.
Okay. Well,
and I'm sure that's not, it's not 100% outcomes, but
in any event, Donald Trump was going to go to Georgia, and I think that's where he first unveiled his, $500 billion plan to help out Black America, which my understanding is somehow based, at least in part, on his conversations that he had with Ice Cube. So the way it looks to me, based on all of these things that are largely unrelated as I string them together, is Ice Cube sat down with Donald Trump only because he could not sit down with the Biden administration because they wouldn't grant him an audience until after the election. Ice Cube was able to get off some of his ideas. Trump used them in the same way that he used the photo ops and so forth to kind of bolster his speech going into Atlanta, where there's a huge Black population, to effectively try to convert some Black folks who might have been on the fence by speaking to Black issues with a $sign attached to his message. And so I see Donald Trump using Ice Cube. I see Ice Cube certainly kind of falling for the okey doke, the same one that Kanye and you've seen that picture of all the people praying for Donald Trump in the Oval Office and all these sorts of things where it's just this dude. In any event, I don't want to get too deep into it. Anyway, so I see Ice Cube sort of falling in that same cycle. But after watching him say his piece, I do kind of feel like he was well-intentioned. And I do feel like Ice Cube was, because you got to think, it takes time to put together, a plan like that. It takes time, and then to work on, whatever. And then worst case scenario, now I'm not defending Ice Cube at all. You know me. And everybody listening knows me. I'm not trying to sit down with nobody even remotely close to that man. But worst case scenario, if Donald Trump wins this election or otherwise refuses to, whatever, Ice Cube has put some paperwork in front of him that he can refer to if, the streets get rowdy after this election. He can start, there's a framework there because Donald Trump has not lived a Black life, has no idea what issues affect Black folks. What does he say? What have you got to lose? What does he say? I'm the best president since Lincoln. That, what is he? So nearsighted.
Listen,
so out of touch.
This is the problem. Once Donald Trump wins, right? If that's the outcome, he doesn't need Black support anymore. So he has no incentive to see anything through that he told Ice Cube that he might or might not do with regard to Black people. It's not happening.
Right.
You guys act like he wasn't just the president. He's not the president right now. He's running ads about this America that Joe Biden's going to have us living in, using footage of the America that he has us living in. Like, at some point, we can't be simpletons. Ice Cube, you're too intelligent to believe that this man's going to honor anything that doesn't serve him. Pretending that he cares to get reelected, sure. But he's not going to win and they say, okay, I'm the second term president.
Now let's build that wall. Now let's get these Black folks together.
Now let's help these Black people.
Let's get them kids out of them cages.
He's not gonna not need our support at all anymore and then do all this good stuff. He knew he was gonna run again. So he could have spent his entire, listen, I don't like dude at all, period. And I know that it's not, as an intelligent person, you shouldn't have a stance that you can't be moved off of with better information. The trouble is, I'm certain that there's not going to be any better information. He's not going to change. He's not going to improve. He's not going to do anything any different. Right?
Right.
So Ice Cube's too intelligent of a person to feel like he was going to bring something to this president who he could have auditioned for us this whole 4 years.
I'm with you.
Right? Biden is not the incumbent. So he has to say, hey, man, I'm trying to win this. It's like if I was a DJ trying to get Ramses to hire me, but Ramses is still trying to get a liquor license and permits from a city to have a club. Hey, look, bro, I would love to hire you. I just don't have no club yet. So as soon as I get a club, let's sit down, let's get it cracking. And then there's this other guy who has a club, who's made it clear, I'm never hiring nobody black, sir, ever. Matter of fact, let me do all I can to not just not hire you, but to make life harder for you. Me saying, okay, since Ramses got to wait until he get his club, let me go over here and not just sit down with this guy, but put myself in a position where this guy can put his arms around me and use me as a prop to further his own cause. You're smarter than that. And forgive me if I get riled up by it, but I know too many intelligent people that are allowing misinformation and short-sightedness and selfishness to cause them to see this thing as non-binary.
Don't vote for Kanye.
How about that?
The world is round.
How about that?
If your ancestors come from Africa, you're black. Anyway, I want to talk about moving on. And thank you everyone who listens every week to Civic Cipher. It really does matter to us. If you're just tuning in, I'm your host Ramses Ja.
They call me Q Ward.
And we now are going to discuss Walter Wallace Jr. As of today, the latest name in the endless list of names of melanated folks who have lost their lives at the hands of excitable police, terrified, fearful police. These guys are supposed to be brave, right?
Heroes, even.
Sure. Anyway, so I don't know all the details. And I understand what that's like when you have a platform like this and you're able to reach lots of people and you don't have all the details. But most of us don't have all the details because there's an investigation going on. But what we do know is what we saw from the video and what was told from the folks who were on the scene. And so if you're not familiar with Walter Wallace Jr., this is one video I'm going to tell you to watch, but use your discretion because you're going to see a human being executed in the street. That's not the sort of thing that I am comfortable watching anymore. But the circumstances surrounding the video are as follows, at least to the best of my knowledge. Walter Wallace Jr. was he suffered from a mental illness. He had a mental condition.
It's really, really creepy to hear you speak about him in the past tense.
Yeah, I never got to talk about him when he was alive.
Man,
that's the way it goes over here. So his mom, I want to say, calls the police to get the police to show up, help her out, whatever the case is. And he has a knife. Now, I don't know if I know someone who has a history with cutting himself. A very close friend of mine. In fact, I know a couple of folks, but certainly this one person is a very close friend of mine, and sometimes we'll have a blade nearby, and it makes me very nervous because in the past he suffered from that. But that doesn't matter. So this guy has a blade, and the police show up on a mental health or mental breakdown phone call. And then the video picks up, and what you see is a woman, I presume to be his mother, screaming and running around in the streets. And you see the police circling a car, and then you see Walter Wallace Jr. circling the same car on the opposite side. And he's holding a knife. I couldn't really make out a knife clearly in the video, but you hear them talking about, him having a knife and drop the knife and that sort of thing. And he walks out from in between the car. Now the cops are standing in the street. And he starts walking toward the police officers. And what I saw in the video, he's not running at them. He doesn't have the knife in a position where he's going to cause harm. It's just kind of in his hand, and he's walking toward them. The police are a good 10, 12 feet away from him. So they're in no imminent danger. And then you hear, I think it was as high as 13 shots rang out, and then his body falls into the street. So some of the early questions that were asked were, was that necessary? Did they try tasers? Non-lethal means, where this human being could still be alive and not executed in front of his mother, who called the police to help, not to end his life. And so we'll leave that there. And I want to get your thoughts. I'll add my own.
There's a reason why they murder us. We're less of a liability dead. And I want you to digest that. We're more of a liability if they just tase us. They shoot us with rubber bullets, if they beat us up. Because then we can talk. We can tell our story. We can give context. We can give nuance. We can give evidence towards their wrongdoings. We can add color to a picture that they would rather be black and white. He was bad. We were scared. He posed harm to us. In defense of ourselves, we killed him. Now, who I am doesn't matter. I don't get to tell my story. I don't get to say what actually happened that day. And our lives, in case you're wondering why we say it every day now, don't matter to them. Because even when they murder us on camera, they get paid leave and at worst reassignment.
I think that's what happened when the officers that shot him, they're on leave until the first part of the year, paid.
And our country, our states, and our cities have made legal deals with their unions to make all of this stuff so.
So, a lot of folks on the opposite side of this conversation say what they normally say. If he had just complied, he'd still be around. And they would say, well, you have to listen to the police, because if the police feel threatened, they have a right to defend themselves. They're doing their job, and they shouldn't be exposed to the prospect of, or the potential for death, and that's why they have weapons, so that they can defend themselves and defend the defenseless. And so I want to speak to those folks who have that mindset. If you have well, you know what? Let's start here. If you just change the colors, then everything falls into place a lot more easily. So if Walter Wallace Jr. was a white, teenager having a mental breakdown, the police showed up on a mental breakdown call, and he has a knife, he's 10 feet away from you. In my mind, I don't see the police ending that person's life. If someone's coming at you with a knife and you have a gun and you are there to preserve and protect life, and you are really the hero, as you put it earlier, and you are really brave and so forth, you can take a few steps back. You can shout some more commands. There's a human life is so precious, it's irreplaceable, and it's so easily snuffed out.
And you don't only have a gun.
Especially when they're black, and that too, that part, because there's police that will spend hours negotiating hostage situations, hours talking people off of ledges, hours and hours and hours, but be black and have a mental breakdown, want to kill yourself, maybe, we'll never know. As you said, he's not around to tell his story. Why was he walking around with a knife? I don't think that any sane person gets a knife and walks to police with guns drawn on him with the intention of winning a fight.
And then the problem tends to be with us. The counter argument is that we've seen the same video footage of white men
doing the same thing,
assault rifles, with guns, attacking cops, running, lunging, jumping toward and on cops and not being killed. So we know that they're capable.
Oh, yeah. They're just so scared. And this is why it's really hard for folks like me to really look at police like they're heroes. I do respect the fact that they have a job to do.
But you have to apply for that job, and you have to test for that job.
Sure.
And you have to interview for that job. I'm telling you, as someone who's done all of the above, you have to show an aptitude. You have to convince a board of police officers that you're capable of doing the job. You have to pass a background check. There's a lot of steps. So they're not being drafted into this position and then just having to figure it out. So when we hear about how hard their job is, sure, but they signed up for it. Some of them are paid handsomely to do it. And if the job itself presents too much stress, you shouldn't do the job. There's no police draft. Not only do you have to go after the job, but it's not an easy job to get relatively to, the manager at Target. It's an easy job to get relative to police forces in other countries and other developed countries. The minimums you have to meet to get those jobs far exceed ours. But you have to go through some steps to get that job. And if you voluntarily go through all you have to do, then don't come and tell us you're killing us because the job is too much.
You're stressed out and you're afraid.
Go do something else, sir. Because when I'm afraid, you're the person that I'm going to call. And as much as we march, and as much as when something happens, we all still dial 911. All of us.
Even the police.
So I shouldn't have to worry about calling you for help and then never seeing my family again, which is in essence what happens here. Yeah. His mother called for help. She didn't call and say, hey, come get this guy off of me. And even if she did, then just come get this guy off of her. Don't come murder her son. Even if he's a bad guy, don't come murder her son.
Yeah, you're a police officer, not an executioner.
Yeah.
So, well, let me paint a little bit more of this picture, though, because again, there's folks that will say, and well-intentioned as they may be, that if you just do what the police say, everything will work out.
Wish that was true.
First off, that is a truth that holds up in more often in instances where the person interacting with police is less melanated. Perhaps the less melanated, the more likely that is to be true. But there is something to be said about. We'll take a special type of person in this instance. We'll take a white woman for this example, and let's call her 26 years old, right? An American citizen, the same as anyone else, capable of anything that anyone else is doing. Women can do everything men can do, and there's nothing crazy here. Just in this example, there's a 26-year-old woman. If she feels like the police are treating her unfairly, and she throws a fit about it. She literally throws food at an officer, or tries to hit, or cries, screams, whatever. People look at that and they say, ha ha ha, that's funny. Of course she's going to get arrested, whatever. And that's the end of it. No one says, well, she should have done what the officer said, because there are some instances where people are able to protest an unjust arrest, even if it's only unjust in their mind, right? And the police
is there actually a such thing
as what?
An unjust arrest?
Sure. The police are not all saints. We know that.
Oh no, I know that on paper there is, but I'm wondering if there's actually ever, if they actually ever see it that way.
Oh yeah. No. I know what you're saying, but
when the police are their own witnesses.
So watch this. Imagine, you and I, we got pulled over in Mississippi. If we had said everything to those officers that we said in the episode of Civic Cipher that we did, that would be asinine. That would be crazy. That would be like us shooting ourselves in our own foot. Because we're black, if we're 26-year-old white women, we could say it all, and it'll be fine. But I think that there's this idea that exists in a lot of folks' mind when it comes to black folks getting mistreated by the police, where if you just do what the police say, then you'll be okay. And what I'm saying is that if a 26-year-old white woman is able to stand up for herself, to stand up for her own dignity, her self-worth, whatever the case is, and say, no, you're wrong, what you're doing is wrong, et cetera, even if she's wrong, if she's able to stand up and do it, then if a black person does the same thing, that's like pretty close to a death sentence in most cases, if not an outright death sentence. You're supposed to do what these people say or die. And I think that considering the optics and considering those dynamics helps you to understand that people's natural impulse is to stand up, to demand dignity. If you're hurting someone, their body's natural tendency is to react to the pain. You're twisting my arm, so if I'm twisting to get away from you, because it's an involuntary action that my body's taking. My nervous system is responding to this pain. But the officer will then say, oftentimes if you're black, you're resisting. Thank you. And if you're resisting, then that's a charge. And if somehow you have a little bit more strength than the officer, or the officer is a little too scared, whatever the case is,
dare.
And it's a nervous system response. If the officer gets hurt or anything like that, then now you've assaulted an officer, et cetera, and on and on and on. And at any point, if the officer feels afraid, like we saw in Georgia, where the guy was sleeping in the driveway at the I forget his name, but he was sleeping in the driveway at the Wendy's, I want to say.
Yeah.
And he was drinking. He was drunk rather. He pulled over his car, went to sleep in the driveway, or in the drive-through, or the parking lot, whatever it was. Police showed up, and he was talking to the police, and it was fine. The police, as soon as they say they're going to arrest him, this guy's drunk. He's out of his mind drunk, right? He's having a conversation, but he's not thinking with all of his faculties. And he turns around and tries to run away. Now, this guy's not fast at all. At no point is it even scary. And the police shoot him in the back.
They're so afraid of him running away from them.
And if you just look, if you took a day out of your life, if you are of this persuasion, if you took a day out of your life and looked into how many times police shoot black people in the back and they lose their life, I'm sure that it will help you reframe that conversation around something that's a bit more factual. But with that said, we are now at the end of another episode of Civic Cipher. So, once again, I'm Ramses Ja.
And I am Q Ward.
And if you want to keep up with us during the week, you can do so at Ramses Ja.
And I am Q Ward.
Or follow the show at Civic Cipher on all social media. And, of course, you can submit questions, topics, and donate at civiccipher.com. All your donations are appreciated. We'll be back next week, same time, same channel. Until then, peace.